Hey guys, tonight we embark on a journey to a time when life was a bit more muted, a tad more somber, and birthdays weren't necessarily the vibrant, cake-filled celebrations we know today. Picture a small, dimly lit stone cottage, flickering candles casting shadows on rough-hewn walls, as a medieval family gathers to mark a special day, not with raucous laughter and balloons, but with quiet reflection and a modest feast. You probably once survived this not because it's dangerous, but because you might just find yourself lulled into a gentle slumber by the thought of how birthdays were celebrated in a world so different from our own. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, while you're at it, drop your location and local time in the comments. I'm curious about where you're tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. In medieval Europe, birthdays were not the grand occasions you might envision. The concept of celebrating one's birthday has deep theological roots, dating back to ancient traditions. In a world where the church held significant sway, birthdays were often viewed with skepticism. The church emphasized humility and piety, so public displays of personal celebration were generally frowned upon. Historians still argue whether early Christians even recognized the significance of birthdays at all, as many believed that celebrating one's birth was akin to celebrating the flesh, which could detract from spiritual pursuits. However, as the medieval period progressed, certain shifts began to occur. The birthday emerged as a notable occasion, particularly among the noble classes. For them, marking the day of one's birth was less about self-indulgence and more about reinforcing social hierarchies. Nobility would gather to celebrate one another, often with elaborate feasts that showcased their wealth. Imagine a long table laden with roasted meats, sweetmeats, and ale, definitely a far cry from the meagre bread and cheese of your average peasant birthday. As we delve deeper, it's essential to recognize the context in which these celebrations occurred. The feudal system dominated Europe, and accordingly, birthdays were influenced by one's social standing. For the peasantry, birthdays were typically low-key affairs. A family might share a simple meal, perhaps a special dish they reserved for the occasion, but the focus was often on gratitude rather than extravagant celebrations. A birthday could well serve as a reminder of the hard work and challenges of the past year, a reflection of survival rather than a jubilant festivity. In contrast, among the upper classes, birthdays could be celebrated with much fanfare. Kings and queens would host lavish banquets attended by knights, lords, and ladies, complete with entertainment like jesters and minstrels. Historians often point out that these festivities served a dual purpose. They were both a celebration of the individual and a political statement, reinforcing allegiances and showcasing wealth. It's a bit like our modern birthday parties that double as networking events, though hopefully with fewer lingering feuds and more cake. As we explore these evolving customs, we'll uncover how different regions in Europe shaped their own unique birthday traditions, influenced by local beliefs and historical events. For instance, in some cultures, the practice of giving gifts on birthdays was considered essential, while in others, it was more of a later development. We see how these early birthday celebrations paved the way for the more festive occasions we now associate with birthdays today. The medieval period also saw an interesting intersection of religious and cultural beliefs concerning birthdays. The church began to acknowledge the importance of saints' feast days, which often coincided with a person's birth date, further embedding the idea of celebrating birthdays into the fabric of society. However, even as these traditions began to evolve, many medieval Europeans were still torn between the public acknowledgement of birthdays and the private, often humble observance of them. So, as we embark on this exploration, prepare for a tapestry woven with threads of history, superstition, and revelry. We'll see how each layer adds to the understanding of how medieval Europeans marked their birthdays, creating practices that, while seemingly quaint by today's standards, were in essence a crucial reflection of their time, beliefs, and social structures. As we continue our exploration of medieval birthday celebrations, it's essential to understand the profound influence of religion on these customs. The church, a monumental force in medieval life, wielded considerable power over both the spiritual and temporal realms. You might imagine how a birthday, a deeply personal occasion, could clash with the church's doctrines regarding humility and the potential dangers of vanity. Instead of being a day of joyous celebration, birthdays were often seen as a somewhat contentious event, teetering on the edge of piety and indulgence. In the early medieval period, birthdays were rarely celebrated. This was primarily due to the church's perspective that the act of celebrating oneself could lead to a dangerous sense of pride. In a world where humility was a virtue, putting oneself in the spotlight was something best avoided. Instead of recognizing the day of one's birth, Christians were encouraged to focus on the lives and feast days of saints, which often served as a more acceptable means of celebration. Historians still argue whether the early Christians even commemorated birthdays at all, as the emphasis was placed more on spiritual milestones than personal ones. As time progressed, however, the Church's stance began to shift slightly. By the late medieval period, a growing acceptance of birthday celebrations arose. This transition was partly due to the influence of the nobility, who began to adopt the practice of celebrating their birthdays with feasts and gatherings. The Church acknowledged these celebrations, but often framed them within a religious context. For instance, one could celebrate by giving thanks to God for another year of life, a subtle way to keep the focus off individual pride. After all, who would dare to be boastful when they were merely expressing gratitude? It's a bit like saying you're celebrating your birthday because you're thankful for the cake, rather than the cake itself being the star of the show. This evolution in perspective also gave rise to various customs and rituals surrounding birthday celebrations. For example, it became common practice for individuals to donate to the Church or perform acts of charity on their birthdays. This not only aligned with the Church's teachings, but also helped reinforce social bonds within the community. Imagine a wealthy noble inviting the poor for a hearty meal on their birthday, a gesture that showcased both their affluence and commitment to the community's welfare. In a way, it's like today's practice of charitable donations in lieu of gifts, an attempt to spread goodwill while still honoring the occasion. Gift-giving became another interesting aspect of birthday celebrations, though it wasn't uniformly practiced across all social strata. Among the nobility, elaborate gifts were exchanged, often reflecting the wealth and status of both the giver and receiver. A finely crafted piece of jewelry or a rare manuscript would signify the giver's esteem, while also reinforcing social ties. Common folk might exchange small, handmade tokens or simple gifts, but often the focus was more on the gathering itself rather than the material aspects. Moreover, the Church's involvement in birthdays introduced layers of ritualistic observance. Specific prayers or blessings were often recited, and in some cases, people would even seek the local priest's blessing to ensure a prosperous year ahead. These practices highlight how intertwined religious beliefs were with cultural customs. The fusion of personal celebration with religious observance illustrates the medieval mindset emerging of the sacred and the secular that was characteristic of the era. Interestingly, while the Church sought to regulate and provide a framework for birthday celebrations, local customs and traditions still flourished. In many regions, particularly those with strong pagan roots, traditional rituals persisted and sometimes blended with Christian practices. For example, in some cultures, folk traditions surrounding the changing seasons would be incorporated into birthday celebrations, with people invoking blessings from various deities for health and prosperity. Such practices reflect the multicultural tapestry of medieval Europe, where beliefs often coexisted and influenced one another. As we peel back the layers of these historical narratives, we find that birthdays were more than mere celebrations of life. They were deeply embedded in the societal and religious structures of the time. They acted as a mirror, reflecting the values, beliefs, and tensions present in medieval society. A birthday, which you might think of as a simple celebration, became a multifaceted event highlighting the complexities of medieval life. So as we move forward, we'll delve into how these religious influences played out on the ground, particularly in how different classes celebrated their birthdays and how those customs varied across regions. Prepare for a journey through the corridors of power, where we'll discover the nuances of birthday celebrations and how they shaped the identities of individuals within the rigid social hierarchy of medieval Europe. As we venture deeper into the medieval landscape of birthday celebrations, it's crucial to grasp the social hierarchy that defined life during this time. Class distinctions permeated every aspect of existence, including how one marked the passage of another year. You might find it intriguing, if not a tad shocking, that your social status could dictate whether you celebrated your birthday with an extravagant feast or a simple meal of bread and ale. For the nobility, birthdays were occasions of great importance, often intertwined with political and social maneuvering. Imagine a grand castle, its banquet hall adorned with tapestries and lit by flickering torchlight. The lord and lady of the manor would host lavish celebrations, inviting knights, lords, and ladies to partake in a feast that showcased their wealth and influence. These gatherings weren't just about personal commemoration. They were a display of power, a way to reinforce alliances and assert social standing. Historians often note how these festivities could serve as fertile ground for political discussions or even the plotting of future marriages. In stark contrast, the common folk experienced birthdays quite differently. For them, celebrating another year of life typically revolved around simple, family-centered gatherings. Picture a small thatched roof cottage where the family might come together to share a hearty stew or a loaf of freshly baked bread. The emphasis was less on indulgence and more on the joy of being together. Often, a birthday could serve as a poignant reminder of the struggles and hardships of the past year, especially in a time when survival was no small feat. Interestingly, the way a birthday was celebrated could also reflect one's occupation. For a farmer, the day might coincide with the harvest season, making it a time for gratitude rather than merriment. Historians still argue whether the collective labor of the community played a role in how birthdays were commemorated among the peasantry. Was it simply another day of toil, or did they find ways to carve out small moments of joy even amidst their hard work? Differences in celebrations also extended to the gifts exchanged during these occasions. In noble circles, extravagant gifts were common, often reflecting the wealth and status of both the giver and receiver. Imagine receiving a beautifully crafted sword or a beautifully illuminated manuscript as a token of esteem. Meanwhile, among the common folk, gifts might be more utilitarian or handmade, perhaps a hand-knit scarf or a wooden toy. These modest exchanges were often imbued with personal significance, symbolizing affection and care rather than status. Another fascinating layer to consider is how birthdays were often marked by a sense of communal celebration for the lower classes. In villages, it was not uncommon for neighbors to come together to celebrate one another's birthdays. Picture the lively atmosphere of a small community gathering, where folk music filled the air and children played games in the background. This communal aspect provided a sense of belonging and support, an essential element in medieval life, where the shared struggles of everyday existence fostered strong ties among villagers. Furthermore, as we explore the regional variations across Europe, the impact of local customs and traditions becomes apparent. In some areas, particularly where pagan influences lingered, unique rituals were observed on birthdays. For instance, folk traditions might call for the lighting of candles or the offering of small sacrifices to local spirits as a way to invoke blessings for the coming year. These practices often blended seamlessly with the more formalized birthday celebrations promoted by the church, illustrating how cultures intermingled in fascinating ways. As the medieval period progressed, the idea of celebrating birthdays began to filter down from the aristocracy to the middle and lower classes. This gradual acceptance helped to shift perspectives, making birthdays a more universally recognized occasion, albeit still steeped in the complexities of class and social standing. However, it's important to note that birthday celebrations were not uniform. They varied widely depending on time, place, and cultural influences. As we continue this journey, we'll examine the specifics of birthday feasts and the merriment that accompanied them. We'll dive into the traditional foods and festivities that marked these special days, revealing how they evolved over time. It's a delicious exploration of flavors and traditions that offer a tantalizing glimpse into daily life during an era when every meal was a testament to survival and community bonding. Moving forward, let's indulge in the delightful yet often understated world of feasting and merrymaking that characterized medieval birthday celebrations. Imagine the clamor of a bustling kitchen as cooks prepare a grand banquet, wooden tables covered in colorful cloths, laden with platters of food that would make anyone's mouth water. While today we might celebrate with cake and ice cream, medieval feasts were elaborate affairs, often reflecting the social status of the host and the local food culture. For the nobility, a birthday feast was nothing short of a showcase of culinary opulence. Picture roasts of succulent meats, perhaps a whole boar or swan, garnished with herbs and spices. The air would be rich with aromas, roasted garlic, sweet fruits, and the tang of vinegar, a medley promising a gastronomic delight. Historians often highlight that these meals were not just about sustenance. They were meant to impress guests and reaffirm social bonds. You might find it surprising, though, that much of the food served at these feasts was often unrecognizable by modern standards. Many dishes were seasoned heavily, and the use of sugar was a luxury reserved for the wealthiest, used sparingly to enhance flavors rather than overwhelm them. Interestingly, the types of food prepared for birthday celebrations were also influenced by the time of year. Seasonal ingredients dictated what would be available, and thus what could be served. The summer birthday might welcome fresh fruits, while winter celebrations could feature hearty stews that warmed the soul on long, chilly nights. The notion of locally sourced was inherently woven into the fabric of medieval life, where the harvest dictated culinary choices. While the nobility revelled in their extravagant meals, common folk celebrated their birthdays quite differently. Imagine a small family gathering with a few friends, sharing a modest but hearty meal, perhaps some bread, cheese, and a stew made from whatever vegetables were in season. A special treat might include a cake, simple and often made from the leftover grains. The cake, while far from the elaborate creations we see today, could still be a source of joy, a sweet end to a humble meal. Historians still debate whether cakes were a widespread feature of birthday celebrations during the medieval period. The first recorded instance of a birthday cake appears in the 15th century, suggesting that the practice evolved gradually. In many regions, cakes were not necessarily reserved for birthdays but were enjoyed during other celebrations as well, making it difficult to pinpoint exactly when they became a staple for this particular occasion. Alongside the food, merrymaking was an essential part of birthday festivities. For the wealthy, entertainment came in the form of minstrels, dancers, and jesters, providing a lively atmosphere that engaged guests. Can you imagine the laughter and clapping as performers danced and sang, their lively antics filling the room with joy and mirth? Celebrating a birthday became an opportunity, not just for feasting but for building camaraderie and strengthening social ties among guests. It was a time when alliances could be solidified and friendships nurtured. For common folk, merriment might take on a different tone. Rather than elaborate performances, gatherings could include simple folk songs, stories shared around a fire, and games played by children. The laughter of friends and family echoed through village streets, creating a sense of community. Celebrating a birthday was as much about the social gathering as it was about the food. The heart and soul of these events lay in the connections forged between individuals. As we navigate through these culinary traditions, we must also consider the underlying symbolism of food in medieval celebrations. Many historians suggest that sharing a meal has always been a vital aspect of human connection, and birthdays were no exception. The act of coming together to share food was a way of reinforcing bonds, both familial and communal. In a time when life was often harsh and unpredictable, these gatherings served as a reminder of the importance of togetherness. We must also highlight the role of drink in these celebrations. Ale and wine were staples at medieval feasts, with the beverage of choice often determined by social status. Nobles might enjoy fine wines, carefully selected from distant vineyards, while commoners would likely quench their thirst with locally brewed ale. The communal act of toasting to the birthday person added yet another layer of warmth and camaraderie to the festivities. As we draw this exploration of feasting and merrymaking to a close, we see that medieval birthday celebrations were rich tapestries woven from food, drink, and community spirit. They were an opportunity to connect with others, celebrate life, and strengthen social fabrics. Each meal, each toast, and every shared laugh contributed to the vibrancy of these occasions, shaping not only the memories of those present but also the traditions that would carry on through the ages. In our next section, we will delve into the fascinating world of gift-giving traditions during medieval birthdays. We'll uncover how the exchange of gifts evolved over time and what those gifts represented in the context of social relationships and cultural values. Ready for an exploration of generosity and sentiment that highlights the essence of connection, even amidst the constraints of class and status. As we move into the realm of gift-giving during medieval birthday celebrations, it's essential to understand how this practice evolved and what it meant for those involved. While today you might expect a birthday party to be all about presents wrapped in colourful paper and tied with ribbons, medieval gift-giving was a much more complex affair, intertwined with social expectations and cultural nuances. For the aristocracy, gift-giving on birthdays was a significant display of wealth and status. Imagine a grand banquet hall, filled with the sounds of laughter and clinking goblets, where the birthday celebrant is presented with extravagant gifts, glimmering jewelry, finely crafted armor, or ornate manuscripts filled with beautiful illustrations. Each gift was a reflection of the giver's esteem, their social standing, and their desire to reinforce alliances. You might find it surprising, but these gifts were often as much about politics as they were about personal affection. In a world where marriages and alliances dictated power dynamics, a well-chosen gift could solidify relationships and ensure loyalty. Historians still argue about the origins of birthday gifts in medieval society. Some suggest that the practice may have roots in ancient customs where gifts were offered to deities or spirits on significant occasions, while others believe that it evolved purely as a reflection of social hierarchies. Regardless of its origins, the act of giving and receiving gifts became an essential part of birthday celebrations among the nobility, often serving to reinforce a sense of community and obligation. In stark contrast, common folk celebrated their birthdays with far simpler gifts. Within these households, the focus was less on material wealth and more on personal significance. A hand-knit scarf or a simple wooden toy might be exchanged among family members, symbolizing affection and care rather than status. These gifts, though modest, often carried deep emotional weight. Imagine a mother presenting her child with a small wooden horse, crafted with love. The joy on the child's face would be immeasurable, far outweighing the lavish gifts of the aristocracy. The significance of gift-giving also varied, depending on the relationship between the giver and the recipient. Among the nobility, gifts were often a calculated gesture aimed at maintaining social ties. The act of giving could signify loyalty, respect, or an attempt to curry favor. For instance, a lord might lavish gifts upon a loyal vassal on their birthday, reinforcing the bonds of fealty. The power dynamics at play were intricate, making birthday gift-giving an art form in negotiation and diplomacy. However, among the common people, the exchange of gifts could take on an equally poignant meaning. For them, birthdays were often occasions for celebrating life and love within the family unit. The act of giving a gift, no matter how simple, was a way to express gratitude and appreciation for one another. It reinforced familial bonds and created cherished memories that would be passed down through generations. You might find it heartwarming to think about how these seemingly small gestures could have a lasting impact on community cohesion. Additionally, the gifts given often reflected the local customs and available materials. In rural areas, handcrafted items were more common, while in towns, merchants might have offered small trinkets or food items. The diversity in gifts across regions showcases the rich tapestry of medieval life, where one's environment significantly influenced their customs. As we explore these gifting practices, it's interesting to note that the church also played a role in shaping gift-giving traditions. Individuals were often encouraged to give to the less fortunate on their birthdays, fostering a sense of charity and community. This practice would serve to remind people of the importance of humility and generosity, traits that were paramount in medieval Christian teachings. You might be surprised to learn that even a small act of kindness on one's birthday was seen as a way to secure blessings for the coming year. Looking back, we see that birthday gifts, whether grand or modest, were laden with meaning. They served as tokens of affection, markers of social status, and instruments for political maneuvering. The evolution of gift-giving from extravagant displays among the elite to more heartfelt exchanges among the common folk highlights the diversity of medieval life and the varying values placed on material wealth and personal connection. As we transition to our next section, we'll delve into the fascinating realm of notable royal birthdays. We'll explore how these extravagant celebrations were organized, the rituals involved, and the lasting impact they had on the perception of birthdays in society. Prepare for tales of grandeur, spectacle, and the intertwining of celebration with power as we unravel the stories of those who celebrated their births amid the splendor of medieval courts. As we dive into the realm of notable royal birthdays during the medieval period, prepare to be transported to opulent courts filled with grandeur and spectacle. Picture the scene, a grand castle, bustling with servants, musicians, and guests, all gathered to celebrate the birth of a prince or princess. The air is thick with anticipation, as everyone knows that these celebrations will be nothing short of extravagant, a far cry from the humble gatherings of common folk. Royal birthdays were not merely personal milestones, they were events of political significance, showcasing power, wealth, and the intricate dynamics of royal families. For medieval royalty, birthdays were often celebrated with lavish feasts that could stretch for days. Imagine a banquet that features roasted peacocks, spice, wines, and pastries shaped like animals, or intricate designs, a true feast for the senses. Historians often emphasize that these extravagant meals served multiple purposes. They entertained guests, displayed the wealth of the host, and reinforced social hierarchies within the court. It was not just a celebration of life, it was a reminder of the power that came with royalty. The more opulent the feast, the more it solidified the idea of the monarch as a divine figure, favored by the heavens. One particularly notable royal birthday was that of King Henry III of England, who ascended the throne in the 13th century. His birthday celebrations were marked by extravagant festivities complete with tournaments, music, and poetry readings. These celebrations were often designed to showcase not just the king's wealth but also the loyalty of his subjects. You might find it intriguing that amidst the feasting, there were often rituals involving homage from nobles, further solidifying their loyalty and reinforcing the king's authority. It was a complex dance of power and celebration, where every gesture had political implications. As royal families celebrated birthdays, they often used these occasions to bolster their images and strengthen alliances. A sumptuous birthday feast could attract powerful allies, and by inviting influential figures, they would reaffirm bonds of loyalty and friendship. Imagine the political machinations behind the scenes, where every guest list and every toast was carefully curated to ensure the right connections were made. In this sense, a birthday celebration became a public relations campaign, where the monarchy showcased their benevolence and strength to the realm. In stark contrast to these royal extravaganzas, we must remember that common folk did not have the luxury of such grand celebrations. For them, birthdays were often less about spectacle and more about gratitude and reflection. However, the influence of royal customs began to trickle down over time. As commoners observed the splendor of royal festivities, some began to adopt elements of these celebrations into their own practices, albeit on a much smaller scale. You might be surprised to learn that medieval peasants sometimes found ways to incorporate elements of feasting and merriment into their own birthday traditions, thereby creating a blend of high and low culture. Interestingly, with the rise of chivalry and the courtly love tradition, birthdays also became occasions for romantic gestures among the nobility. A knight might present his beloved with gifts or perform feats of valor in her honor, further elevating the significance of the day. These romanticized notions of birthdays began to permeate through literature and poetry, reflecting the evolving social norms and expectations of courtly behavior. Moreover, the presence of entertainment during royal birthday celebrations cannot be overlooked. Minstrels and troubadours would fill the halls with music, and performers would engage guests in tales of heroics and love, adding an enchanting atmosphere to the festivities. The inclusion of entertainment helped to create a sense of joy and community, despite the underlying political maneuvering at play. It's a bit like modern-day birthday parties, where music and laughter create lasting memories, but with far more layers of complexity. As we dissect these royal celebrations, we must acknowledge the overarching themes of power, legitimacy, and social bonding that they encapsulated. Royal birthdays were not just personal milestones, they were significant events that shaped the political landscape of medieval Europe. They reinforced the divine right of kings, established loyalties, and set precedents for how birthdays would be celebrated in the future. Looking ahead, we will explore the cultural variations across Europe regarding birthday celebrations. Each region had its own unique customs and traditions that shaped how birthdays were marked, revealing a rich tapestry of practices across the continent. From the north to the south, we'll uncover how local beliefs and historical influences created diverse birthday customs that reflected the unique identities of each culture. As we now turn our attention to the diverse cultural variations of birthday celebrations across medieval Europe, you'll discover a fascinating array of customs that reflect the local beliefs, social structures, and historical influences unique to each region. Picture yourself traveling from the rolling hills of England to the vibrant streets of Italy, witnessing how the celebration of birthdays was shaped by geography, culture, and religion. Each locale added its own flavor to these special occasions, creating a rich tapestry of traditions that have often been overlooked. In England, for example, birthdays began to gain more recognition during the medieval period. The celebration of one's birthday was often accompanied by a humble gathering of family and friends, where simple feasts and blessings were exchanged. It was customary to invite neighbors to share in the joy, creating a sense of community. However, as the influence of the monarchy grew, the nobility began to adopt more elaborate birthday customs. The joyful simplicity of common folk celebrations contrasted sharply with the opulence seen in royal courts, offering a window into the class divides of the time. Historians often debate whether the growing celebration of birthdays among the nobility inspired the commoners, or if the latter's traditions gradually influenced the former. Meanwhile, in France, birthdays were celebrated with great enthusiasm, particularly among the aristocracy. French nobility would host grand balls and lavish banquets filled with music and dance. Imagine an evening illuminated by chandeliers, with elegantly dressed guests waltzing across the floor, accompanied by lively musicians. In this context, birthdays became opportunities for displaying wealth and social status. The French also embraced the notion of cake, with early versions of layered cakes becoming popular around this time, definitely a precursor to the elaborate cakes we indulge in today. However, the tradition of gift-giving in France was less pronounced among the lower classes, who often relied on simple tokens of affection rather than extravagant presents. Venturing further into southern Europe, we find that Italian celebrations were heavily influenced by local customs and regional variations. In some areas, birthdays were marked by religious observances, where families would attend mass to give thanks for the life of the birthday person. In other regions, particularly in cities like Florence, elaborate public festivals could be organized to honor prominent citizens or nobility on their birthdays. This communal aspect of celebration often included parades, music, and fireworks, showcasing the vibrant culture of the Renaissance that was blossoming during this period. Historians still argue about the extent to which these public displays were influenced by earlier pagan festivals, reflecting the complex interplay between old customs and new traditions. Traveling north to Germany, we discover yet another layer of complexity. Here, birthday celebrations often included the lighting of candles, a tradition believed to symbolize the illumination of the soul and the hope for a prosperous year ahead. Families would gather for a modest meal, and children would often receive small gifts. The Germans also introduced the concept of a birthday wreath, where candles were placed on a decorated cake, and the birthday person would make a wish before blowing them out. This practice would eventually evolve into the modern birthday cake tradition we recognize today. You might find it fascinating that the candle-blowing ritual, so common in contemporary celebrations, has its roots in these medieval customs. In Scandinavia, birthday celebrations were often more subdued. The focus was primarily on family and close friends, with gatherings typically centered around a simple meal. In some communities, it was customary to celebrate the birthday of a child with songs and small gifts, reinforcing family bonds and the importance of community. However, given the harsh climates and agricultural cycles, birthdays may have been regarded as more of a reflection on survival and gratitude rather than an exuberant celebration of life. The influence of pagan traditions was also evident in various cultures, particularly in how birthdays were celebrated. Many communities held beliefs that tied birthdays to supernatural forces. It was common to incorporate rituals to ward off bad luck or invoke blessings. In some areas, certain foods might be prepared to symbolize good fortune, while others might involve specific prayers or offerings to ensure a prosperous year. This blending of cultures illustrates how medieval Europeans navigated their beliefs while celebrating birthdays, merging the sacred with the secular. As we examine these cultural variations, an overarching theme emerges. Birthdays served as a reflection of both individual identity and community values. Each region adapted the celebration to fit its customs, societal norms, and the prevailing cultural landscape. While the essence of birthday celebrations might be universally recognized, the way in which they were celebrated could vary dramatically from one locale to another. As we proceed to our next section, we will explore the rich tapestry of superstitions and rituals associated with birthdays in medieval Europe. These beliefs often played a significant role in how individuals approached the celebration of their births and provided insight into the fears and hopes of the time. Prepare to uncover the fascinating intersection of tradition, belief, and celebration that defined the medieval experience, as we delve into the intriguing world of superstitions and rituals associated with birthdays in medieval Europe. Prepare to uncover a realm where belief and celebration intertwine. Birthdays, as significant markers of time and life, were often shrouded in a tapestry of rituals and customs that reflected the fears and hopes of the people. For many, these traditions provided a sense of control over the unpredictable nature of life, where fortune could change in an instant. In medieval society, birthdays were often regarded with a mix of reverence and trepidation. The belief that a person's birthday could influence their fate was widespread. Some cultures thought that the day one was born held magical properties, and the way a birthday was celebrated could impact the individual's luck for the coming year. On such occasions, people would invoke blessings and perform rituals to ward off negativity and promote good fortune. Historians still argue whether such beliefs were remnants of ancient pagan practices or if they naturally evolved alongside the rise of Christianity, reflecting a syncretism of old and new traditions. For instance, in many medieval communities, it was common to light candles on a birthday, a practice steeped in superstition. The number of candles often corresponded to the age of the individual, symbolizing the illumination of the soul and the light that life brings. However, the act of blowing out the candles also carried significance. It was believed that if the birthday person managed to blow out all the candles in one breath, their wishes would come true. This fascinating interplay of hope and ritual speaks volumes about how birthdays were perceived as more than mere celebrations. They were pivotal moments in the continuum of life. In various cultures, specific foods were prepared to symbolize good luck and prosperity. For example, in some regions, it was customary to bake a special bread or cake, often containing hidden ingredients like coins or charms. This tradition, rooted in the belief that finding such items would bring good fortune, adds an element of surprise and excitement to the celebration. Imagine the anticipation of guests as they cut into the cake, each hoping to discover the hidden charm that would signal a year of prosperity ahead. Moreover, certain superstitions dictated what one should or should not do on their birthday. For example, many believed it was bad luck to cry or show anger on one's birthday, as it might set a negative tone for the year ahead. Thus, celebrations were often imbued with a sense of joy and positivity, creating an atmosphere that honored the individual while promoting goodwill. This concept mirrors modern practices where birthdays are typically filled with laughter and cheer, reflecting the idea that the way one celebrates can influence their future. In some communities, protection from evil spirits was a key focus during birthday celebrations. Specific rituals might involve the chanting of prayers or blessings, intended to shield the birthday person from misfortune. In cultures with strong animistic beliefs, it wasn't unusual to invoke the spirits of ancestors or local deities, asking for guidance and protection. These practices highlight how birthdays served as a moment for individuals to connect with their spiritual beliefs, seeking favor from the metaphysical realm as they transitioned into another year of life. Interestingly, the influence of astrology also played a role in birthday celebrations. Many medieval individuals believed that the alignment of the stars and planets on the day of their birth could dictate their personality traits and fortunes. Astrologers were often consulted to determine auspicious days for celebrations, as it was thought that launching into a new year with favorable celestial conditions could bring about success and happiness. This reliance on astrology adds yet another layer of complexity to how birthdays were understood and celebrated. As we navigate these superstitions and rituals, it becomes clear that birthdays were rich with meaning, serving as both personal milestones and collective cultural expressions. They provided a platform for individuals to reflect on their past while looking forward to the future, often accompanied by a healthy dose of hope and fear. It's intriguing to think how these historical practices echo in today's celebrations, where we still uphold certain traditions, whether consciously or unconsciously, that link us to our ancestors. In our next section, we will explore how birthdays were represented in medieval literature and art. From poems celebrating the passage of time to illustrations depicting festivity, we'll uncover how these artistic expressions shed light on the significance of birthdays in medieval society. Join me as we examine how these creative works not only entertained, but also reflected the cultural values of the time, adding yet another dimension to our understanding of birthday celebrations. As we turn our attention to these representation of birthdays in medieval literature and art, prepare to step into a world where celebration, reflection, and cultural values intertwine. In the medieval period, artistic expressions of their written works or visual art served not only to entertain but also to convey deeper meanings and insights into societal norms. Birthdays, as significant milestones in the human experience, found their way into poems, stories, and illustrations, marking their importance in the cultural fabric of the time. Literature from the medieval period offers glimpses into how birthdays were perceived and celebrated. Consider the chivalric romances that were immensely popular. These tales often highlighted the grand birthdays of knights and noble ladies, where lavish feasts and tournaments would take place. The celebrations served as backdrops for larger narratives about love, honor, and duty. For instance, in many stories, a knight would strive to win the favor of a lady on her birthday, showcasing both his prowess and devotion. This romanticized portrayal reflects how birthdays were not merely personal milestones but events that could alter the course of a story, linking individual celebrations to broader themes of heroism and courtly love. One notable example can be found in the works of Geoffrey Chaucer, whose Canterbury Tales frequently touch on themes of celebration and social interaction. While Chaucer may not directly address birthdays in a literal sense, the interactions and festivities described in his narratives echo the communal gatherings associated with such occasions. The tales reveal the significance of companionship, joy, and rivalry, qualities that are intrinsic to birthday celebrations, whether in jest or earnestness. In addition to literature, visual art from the period provides insight into birthday celebrations. Illuminated manuscripts adorned with intricate illustrations often depicted scenes of feasting, dancing, and merriment. These artworks served as both decorative elements and storytelling devices, capturing the essence of communal joy. Imagine a beautifully illustrated manuscript showing a lavish birthday banquet, complete with elegantly dressed figures, tables brimming with food, and musicians playing in the background. Such images not only celebrate the occasion, but also reinforce the values of community and connection that were central to medieval life. Moreover, religious art often intertwined with birthday motifs, particularly in depictions of saints. The celebration of a saint's feast day could coincide with an individual's birthday, intertwining personal and spiritual milestones. In churches and cathedrals, stained glass windows might showcase scenes of saints surrounded by jubilant crowds, creating a visual narrative that emphasized the intersection of earthly celebration and heavenly favor. This blending of religious and secular themes reflects how birthdays were perceived as not just personal, but as part of a larger cosmic order. Interestingly, the practice of commissioning art for birthdays was also present among the wealthy elite. Noble families would often commission portraits or create murals that celebrated significant milestones within their lineage, including birthdays. These artworks became a way to document lineage and honor family heritage. Imagine a family crest adorned with symbols, representing each member, brought to life in a vibrant tapestry. Such artworks would not only commemorate the event but also serve as a means of asserting status and legacy. As we explore these artistic expressions, we must also consider how they shaped and were shaped by societal values. The celebration of birthdays in literature and art reflects a collective understanding of the importance of life's milestones, as well as a desire to capture and commemorate them. They encapsulate the emotions of joy and gratitude, yet also echo the underlying beliefs and superstitions that accompanied such celebrations. Moreover, the portrayal of birthdays in these creative works highlights the interconnectedness of personal and communal experiences. Whether through the lens of chivalric romance or religious devotion, birthdays became a means of bringing people together, reinforcing social bonds and celebrating life cycles. They provided a canvas upon which shared values and emotions could be painted literally and figuratively. As we progress to our next section, we will investigate the intriguing concept of children's birthdays in the medieval period. We'll explore how the celebrations of the young contrasted with those of adults, revealing not only the evolving perception of childhood but also how the significance of birthdays began to shift over time. Get ready to uncover the unique customs and traditions that marked the coming-of-age celebrations in the medieval world. As we turn our focus to the concept of children's birthdays in the medieval period, we enter a fascinating realm, where the celebration of youth began to take shape in unique and meaningful ways. While the idea of celebrating birthdays was well established among adults, children's birthdays were often viewed through a different lens that reflected the evolving perceptions of childhood, innocence, and social expectations. In medieval society, childhood was often seen as a transient phase, a time when individuals were groomed for their eventual roles as adults. Consequently, the celebration of children's birthdays was not always as elaborate or significant as those of their elders. Much of the time, these celebrations were marked by low-key gatherings within the family unit, where the focus was on simple joys rather than extravagant displays. Imagine a modest feast of bread, cheese, and perhaps a small cake, shared among family members. The emphasis was on gratitude for the child's continued health and survival, especially in an era when infant and childhood mortality rates were high. Historians often point out that the notion of celebrating childhood itself was still developing during this period. Children were typically seen as miniatures of adults, expected to take on responsibilities at a young age. Consequently, birthdays for children were less about self-indulgence and more about acknowledging their growth and readiness to contribute to the household. You might find it fascinating that some families would use birthdays as an opportunity to teach children important life lessons about gratitude, humility, and responsibility. In contrast to the more subdued celebrations among common folk, noble families began to recognize the significance of lavish birthday festivities for their children, especially as the idea of childhood began to evolve. The children of the aristocracy might enjoy grand parties filled with games, entertainment, and feasting, designed not only to celebrate their birth but also to prepare them for their future roles in society. Imagine a lavishly decorated banquet hall, filled with colorful banners and tables brimming with treats, as young noble children are entertained by musicians and jesters. These celebrations were not only about joy but also served as social networking opportunities for families, reinforcing alliances among the elite. A particularly notable example of a royal childhood celebration can be found in the life of the young Henry VI of England, who was crowned king at a very young age. His birthday celebrations were marked by great fanfare, reflecting not just a personal milestone but a political spectacle. The events surrounding such royal birthdays included lavish feasts, tournaments and gatherings that showcased their status, while also reinforcing their future responsibilities as leaders. These celebrations were a complex intertwining of joy and duty, setting the stage for the expectations placed on young royalty. As the medieval period progressed, the customs surrounding children's birthdays continued to evolve. By the late Middle Ages, we see a greater emphasis on celebrating the individuality of children, leading to the incorporation of games, gifts, and more interactive festivities. The tradition of giving gifts to children on their birthdays became more pronounced, often including toys or items that reflected their future roles, such as miniature swords for boys or dolls for girls. This shift illustrates how birthdays began to serve as a platform for nurturing the identity of children within the context of their social roles. While common children were less likely to receive extravagant gifts, they often found joy in the simplicity of their celebrations. Families would create handmade toys, craft special treats, or organize games to foster a sense of community and festivity. The act of coming together to celebrate a child's birthday emphasized the importance of family and connections, reinforcing social bonds within the community. In this sense, birthdays became a moment of joy amidst the hardships of daily life, a brief respite where laughter and love could flourish. It's also important to note that the influence of religious observances played a role in shaping how children's birthdays were celebrated. In many families, particularly those with strong Christian beliefs, it was customary to incorporate prayers or blessings into the festivities. Families would gather to give thanks for the child's life, reflecting the intertwining of secular and sacred elements in the observance of birthdays. The blending of these practices served to remind families of their spiritual responsibilities as they celebrated the joy of life. As we conclude our exploration of children's birthdays, we see that they were marked by a unique blend of joy, responsibility, and community. The evolution of these celebrations reflects broader shifts in societal attitudes toward childhood, individuality, and the role of family. Birthday, for children, became moments that not only honored their existence, but also prepared them for the roles they would assume in the future. In our next section, we will delve into the influence of pagan roots on birthday celebrations in medieval Europe. We will explore how ancient customs and beliefs persisted, reshaping the way birthdays were celebrated, and revealing the interplay between the old and new traditions that characterized this fascinating period. Get ready to uncover the layered history behind medieval birthday practices. As we delve into the influence of pagan roots on birthday celebrations in medieval Europe, we enter a captivating exploration of how ancient customs and beliefs persisted, subtly reshaping the way birthdays were observed. Long before the rise of Christianity, many European cultures celebrated the passage of time through various rituals and festivities, often tied to the cycles of nature. These pagan practices set the stage for the evolution of birthday celebrations, creating a fascinating interplay between old and new traditions. In ancient times, the concept of celebrating one's birth was closely linked to the changing seasons and agricultural cycles. Many cultures believed that birthdays held significant spiritual power, marking a moment when individuals were particularly susceptible to the influences of fate and fortune. For instance, Roman traditions included the celebration of Natalis, which honored the birthdays of deities and distinguished notable individuals. These celebrations were often marked by feasting, offerings, and rituals intended to invoke blessings for the coming year. When Christianity began to spread throughout Europe, many pagan practices were absorbed and transformed as the Church sought to integrate local customs into the new faith. This syncretism allowed for the continuation of certain birthday traditions, while framing them within a Christian context. Historians still debate the extent to which early Christians embraced or rejected the celebration of birthdays, but certain customs undoubtedly endured. For example, the practice of lighting candles on cakes can be traced back to ancient rituals where fire represented the sun's life-giving power, symbolizing warmth and protection. In many rural communities, remnants of pagan beliefs regarding birthdays persisted. Some cultures held the belief that spirits were particularly active during one's birthday, making it a time of heightened vulnerability. To counteract any negative influences, families would engage in protective rituals, such as decorating their homes with greenery or performing dances around a bonfire. These elements of celebration not only honored the individual, but also invoked protection from malevolent forces. Imagine the vibrant scene of villagers gathering around a fire, singing and dancing while invoking blessings, creating a fusion of festivity and spirituality. Moreover, the connection between birthdays and agricultural cycles further illustrates how pagan practices influenced these celebrations. Many societies believed that the time of year when one was born could affect their fortune and personality. For instance, those born in the spring were often thought to embody vitality and growth, while those born in the winter might be seen as more introspective and reserved. This belief echoed the ancient idea that the individual was closely tied to the rhythms of nature, reinforcing the importance of celebrating one's birth in harmony with the earth. As Christianity became more established, certain aspects of pagan traditions were reinterpreted. The Church began to emphasize the significance of saints' feast days, which often coincided with an individual's birthday, creating a framework that allowed for celebration while maintaining a connection to spiritual beliefs. This melding of practices helped to shift the focus from purely personal celebration to a more community-oriented event that acknowledged both individual lives and their connection to the divine. Interestingly, this blending can also be seen in the way different regions approach the celebration of birthdays. In some cultures, remnants of pagan customs led to unique variations in how birthdays were observed. For example, in Slavic traditions, the name day often celebrated alongside a birthday was marked with festivities that drew heavily on pagan rituals, emphasizing the importance of community and ancestral connection. This celebration served as a reminder of one's roots and heritage, highlighting the importance of familial and social bonds. In addition, the notion of superstitions associated with birthdays can also be traced back to ancient beliefs. Many cultures maintained a strong belief in the power of charms, omens, and rituals to influence fate. For example, certain foods might be prepared for offerings, or specific rites might be performed to ensure a prosperous year ahead. The existence of these practices underscores the deep-seated human desire to control the uncontrollable aspects of life, particularly during significant moments like birthdays. As we reflect on the influence of pagan roots on medieval birthday celebrations, we see a rich tapestry of beliefs and customs woven together. The persistence of ancient traditions demonstrates how deeply ingrained practices can shape the ways in which life's milestones are honored and celebrated. Birthdays, once tied closely to the cycles of nature and spiritual realms, evolved to incorporate religious significance while retaining echoes of their older roots. As we move forward in our exploration, we will examine how birthday celebrations have continued to evolve over time, particularly focusing on the social dynamics at play. We'll explore how public celebrations transformed into personal rituals, reflecting broader changes in society and individual identity. Get ready to uncover the fascinating evolution of birthday customs as they transitioned from medieval traditions to the modern celebrations we recognize today. As we explore the evolution of birthday celebrations from the medieval period to modern times, we uncover a fascinating transformation characterized by shifting social dynamics and cultural practices. Over the centuries, birthdays transitioned from communal festivities steeped in tradition to more personalized rituals, reflecting broader societal changes in identity, individualism, and the way we celebrate life's milestones. In the medieval era, birthdays were often communal events, where local customs and societal expectations shaped how individuals marked their special day. These celebrations involved family, friends, and community members coming together, reinforcing social bonds and emphasizing the collective nature of human experience. The act of gathering to celebrate a birthday was as much about community and connection as it was about the individual being honored. Imagine a cozy village gathering, where laughter and cheer filled the air, highlighting the importance of shared experience in the celebration of life. However, as Europe moved into the Renaissance and beyond, there was a gradual shift toward recognizing the individual and emerging sense of personal identity that began to reshape how birthdays were celebrated. The influence of humanism emphasized the importance of the individual and personal achievements, leading to a cultural shift where birthdays became more about the person being celebrated. This transformation mirrored changes in society as a whole, where individual accomplishments began to be valued more than collective identity. With the rise of the bourgeoisie and the expansion of the middle class, birthdays became opportunities for families to showcase their growing wealth and social status. As people sought to differentiate themselves from one another, birthday celebrations began to incorporate elements of personal expression and individuality. Lavish parties, unique gifts, and themed celebrations became more commonplace, reflecting the distinct tastes and preferences of the person being celebrated. You might find it interesting that this movement toward individuality ultimately laid the groundwork for the elaborate birthday parties we see in contemporary society. As we moved into the 18th and 19th centuries, the notion of the birthday cake evolved and became a central element of birthday celebrations. The concept of a cake adorned with candles, where one would make a wish before blowing them out, became widely popularized. This practice, while rooted in the ancient tradition of lighting candles, transformed into a joyous ritual that emphasized personal reflection and hope for the future. You can almost picture the scene, a child's eyes sparkling with excitement as they prepare to blow out the candles, surrounded by friends and family, creating a moment that encapsulates both joy and desire. The 19th century also saw the emergence of commercialism and consumer culture, which further influenced how birthdays were celebrated. Greeting cards became a popular way to acknowledge birthdays, allowing people to express their sentiments in ways that were previously limited to in-person interactions. This shift marked the beginning of a more standardized approach to celebrating birthdays, where commercial products became integral to the experience. The rise of birthday parties as a societal norm, complete with games and entertainment, also reflected changing attitudes toward childhood and the importance of celebrating youth. Interestingly, the celebration of adulthood birthdays began to gain traction during this time as well. While children's birthdays had been marked with great joy and festivity, the milestones of adulthood became significant events worthy of celebration. Coming-of-age parties and milestone birthdays such as the 18th, 21st, and 30th were increasingly recognized as moments to honor life's transitions. This evolution in perspective underscored the importance of recognizing personal milestones throughout one's life, reinforcing the idea that every birthday is an opportunity to reflect on growth and achievements. As we entered the 20th century, birthdays continued to evolve and adapt to societal changes. The influence of diverse cultures and globalization led to a greater variety of celebratory practices. From elaborate themed parties to simple gatherings, the ways in which people chose to commemorate their birthdays became more diverse and influenced by personal preferences and cultural backgrounds. The inclusion of multicultural elements in birthday celebrations reflected the interconnectedness of societies and the richness of diverse traditions. Today, birthdays often embody a mix of individuality and communal celebration, serving as opportunities for self-expression while also nurturing relationships. Social media has introduced new dimensions to birthday celebrations, allowing individuals to share their special days with a broader audience, often receiving well wishes from friends and family across the globe. This digital age has transformed how we acknowledge birthdays, emphasizing connectivity in a world that can often feel fragmented. As we reflect on this journey, it becomes evident that the evolution of birthday celebrations mirrors broader cultural shifts, illustrating how traditions have transformed over time. From communal gatherings in medieval societies to the personalized celebrations we recognize today, birthdays have always served as critical markers of human experience, encapsulating our desires for connection and individuality. In our next section, we will engage in historical debates surrounding the significance of birthdays. We'll explore the contrasting perspectives of historians and scholars regarding the role of birthdays in cultural identity, societal values, and historical narratives. Get ready to delve into the discussions that highlight the complexity and significance of this seemingly simple celebration. As we delve into the historical debates surrounding the significance of birthdays, we uncover a rich tapestry of perspectives that highlight the complexity of this seemingly simple celebration. While birthdays may appear to be universally joyous occasions, scholars and historians have long engaged in discussions about their cultural, social, and historical implications. These debates often revolve around the nature of birthdays as markers of identity, the influence of societal values, and the ways in which they reflect changing norms over time. One of the primary points of contention among historians is the degree to which birthdays held significance in medieval society compared to other life milestones. Some argue that the celebration of birthdays was relatively minor in the grand scheme of life events, overshadowed by more crucial occasions such as weddings, religious rites, and the observance of saints' feast days. They posit that birthdays were often viewed through a lens of humility and practicality, where the focus was placed on survival and the daily grind rather than personal celebration. This perspective emphasizes the communal and sometimes somber nature of life during the medieval period, suggesting that marking one's birthday was more about acknowledging another year of survival than indulging in joyous festivities. Conversely, other scholars argue passionately for the significance of birthdays as an essential aspect of personal and social identity. They contend that these celebrations served as profound markers of individual existence and continuity, allowing people to reflect on their lives, achievements, and connections with others. Birthdays, in this view, become a lens through which we can examine broader societal values, highlighting the importance of community, familial ties, and the human desire for recognition. This perspective emphasizes that even in an era marked by hardship, birthdays provided an opportunity for joy and reflection, reinforcing the bonds that tied communities together. Historians also debate the implications of how social status influenced birthday celebrations. The stark contrasts between how the nobility and common folk commemorated birthdays raise questions about class dynamics and cultural values. Some argue that the grand celebrations of the elite served to reinforce social hierarchies, demonstrating the power dynamics at play within the medieval context. By showcasing their wealth and influence through elaborate festivities, the nobility created a distinct divide between themselves and the lower classes, effectively utilizing birthdays as tools of social stratification. On the other hand, others point out that even among the common folk, birthdays represented an opportunity for community cohesion and shared identity. The gatherings, however modest, emphasized the importance of relationships and connection within the community. They argue that the act of coming together to celebrate a birthday, regardless of social class, highlighted the inherent human desire for connection and belonging, elevating the significance of birthdays beyond mere social constructs. In addition to these discussions, the emergence of birthdays as markers of personal identity in contemporary society has sparked further debates among historians and sociologists. As our cultural understanding of individuality and self-expression continues to evolve, the significance of birthdays has shifted dramatically. The rise of consumer culture has transformed birthdays into grand affairs laden with expectations for elaborate gifts and parties. Critics argue that this commercialization can overshadow the personal significance of the day, reducing it to a series of transactions rather than genuine expressions of love and affection. In response, some scholars advocate for a return to the roots of birthday celebrations, emphasizing the importance of mindfulness and authenticity. They argue that birthdays should serve as moments of reflection and connection rather than a mere checklist of gifts and parties. This perspective calls for a re-examination of how we approach birthdays, encouraging individuals to prioritize meaningful interactions over superficial displays. As we engage in these historical debates, we must recognize that birthdays are not merely personal milestones, but reflections of the broader cultural landscape. They offer insights into individual identities, societal structures, and the values that shape our lives. The ongoing discourse surrounding birthdays serves as a reminder of the complexities inherent in even the simplest of celebrations, urging us to consider the layers of meaning that accompany the act of honoring one's birth. As we approach the final section of our exploration, we will reflect on the legacy of medieval birthday practices and how they resonate in contemporary celebrations. We'll examine the ways in which these historical customs continue to influence our modern understanding of birthdays, revealing the enduring significance of life's milestones across time. Get ready to uncover the connections between the past and the present as we draw our journey to a close. As we reach the final stretch of our exploration into the legacy of medieval birthday practices, we find ourselves reflecting on how these historical traditions continue to resonate in contemporary celebrations. The customs and rituals that surrounded birthdays in medieval Europe have left an indelible mark on how we approach these significant milestones today, echoing through time in ways that are both profound and illuminating. At the heart of modern birthday celebrations lies the enduring sense of community and connection that characterized medieval festivities. While our contemporary gatherings may be more elaborate, the essence of bringing family and friends together to honor an individual remains unchanged. Today's birthday parties often feature a mix of personal touches and communal joy, much like their medieval counterparts. Whether it's a cozy family dinner or a large-scale celebration, the act of coming together to share in the joy of life continues to be a fundamental aspect of the occasion. One of the most significant legacies of medieval birthday practices is the emphasis on individual recognition. The medieval period marked a turning point where birthdays began to emerge as personal milestones, and this has only intensified in modern times. Today, birthdays serve not only as a date for celebration, but also as an opportunity for self-reflection and personal growth. People often take time to evaluate their past year, set new goals, and express gratitude for the relationships that enrich their lives. This introspective element, though perhaps less pronounced in medieval celebrations, aligns with the broader evolution of how we view and honor our individual journeys. The incorporation of birthday cakes and candles can also be traced back to medieval customs, where the act of lighting candles symbolized hope and illumination. The modern ritual of making a wish before blowing out the candles has become a beloved tradition, imbued with a sense of magic and possibility. This practice harkens back to ancient beliefs about the spiritual significance of birthdays, reinforcing the idea that these milestones can hold power and potential. The simple act of sharing cake, much like the communal feasts of medieval times, remains a delicious way to foster connection and joy among loved ones. Moreover, the influence of commercialism and consumer culture in contemporary birthday celebrations draws parallels with the historical practices of the medieval elite, who often used lavish feasts and gifts to assert their status. Today, birthdays can sometimes feel overshadowed by expectations for extravagant parties and presents, echoing the way social hierarchies were reinforced in the past. However, this commercialization has also sparked discussions about authenticity and mindfulness in how we celebrate. Many individuals and families are now prioritizing meaningful experiences over material possessions, much like the communal gatherings of earlier times. This return to simpler pleasures emphasizes the heart of the celebration: connection, love, and appreciation for one another. Furthermore, the blending of diverse cultural practices in modern celebrations reflects the interconnectedness of our global society. As we've seen throughout history, birthdays have been shaped by local customs and beliefs, and this interplay continues today. The incorporation of various cultural traditions, from piñatas in Latino celebrations to the practice of name days in Eastern European, enriches our understanding of birthdays and adds layers of meaning to how we honor these occasions. This fusion of traditions mirrors the complexity of human experience, highlighting our shared values while celebrating our unique identities. Finally, as we consider the future of birthday celebrations, it's clear that the legacy of medieval practices will continue to influence how we mark these significant life events. The interplay of tradition and innovation will likely shape the evolution of birthdays, allowing us to honor the past while adapting to contemporary values and societal changes. Birthdays will remain vital touchpoints for connection, reflection, and joy, serving as reminders of the importance of celebrating life's milestones, both individually and collectively. In this journey through the history of medieval birthdays, we've uncovered a rich tapestry of traditions, beliefs, and cultural values that have shaped how we celebrate today. From communal gatherings to personal reflections, birthdays have evolved into meaningful expressions of life, love, and identity. As we close this exploration, we invite you to carry forward the spirit of these historical practices in your own celebrations, embracing the connections that make life truly special. As we draw our exploration of medieval birthday celebrations to a close, let's take a moment to reflect on the profound legacy these practices have left in shaping our contemporary understanding of birthdays. Throughout this journey, we have traversed time and space, uncovering the intricate layers of meaning embedded in how people celebrated life's milestones across different cultures and epochs. The customs and traditions that originated in the medieval period continue to resonate today, reminding us of the values and connections that define our humanity. The essence of birthdays as moments of joy, gratitude, and community has persisted through the ages. Whether in the grand halls of a medieval castle or the cozy confines of a modern home, the act of gathering with loved ones to celebrate another year of life remains a powerful and universal experience. This continuity highlights the timeless human desire for connection and recognition, a reminder that we are not alone in our journeys. Just as medieval gatherings fostered bonds among friends and family, today's celebrations serve the same purpose, reinforcing the importance of relationships in our lives. Moreover, the evolution of birthday celebrations reflects broader cultural shifts and societal values, demonstrating the interplay between tradition and modernity. The transition from communal festivities to individualized celebrations mirrors the changing perceptions of identity and self-worth. While medieval birthdays often emphasized humility and collective joy, contemporary celebrations increasingly allow space for personal expression and introspection. As we navigate this balance, we find opportunities to honor both our individuality and our connections with others. The legacy of medieval birthday customs is also evident in the rich tapestry of practices that have emerged in our globalized world. Today, birthdays are celebrated in a multitude of ways, incorporating diverse cultural influences and traditions. From the spirited festivities of a lively piñata party to the solemnity of a spiritual blessing, the variety of celebrations reflects the richness of human experience and the shared values that transcend cultural boundaries. This blending of traditions enriches our understanding of what it means to celebrate life, inviting us to explore and appreciate the myriad ways people honor their journeys. As we consider the rituals that have become integral to modern celebrations, such as birthday cakes, candles, and gift-giving, we recognize their roots in historical practices. The act of lighting candles symbolizes hope, while the sharing of cake reinforces communal bonds. These traditions not only bring joy to the celebrations but also remind us of the deeper meanings behind these rituals, so our desires for love, connection, and the promise of new beginnings. Furthermore, the conversations surrounding authenticity and mindfulness in how we celebrate birthdays invite us to reflect on our values and intentions. In an age where commercialization often overshadows personal significance, many are turning back to the heart of the celebration, genuine connections with loved ones and moments of reflection on growth. This return to the essence of birthdays echoes the communal spirit of medieval celebrations and encourages us to prioritize relationships over materialism, fostering a culture that values authenticity and shared experiences. As we conclude this exploration, it is essential to acknowledge the importance of honoring our past while embracing the possibilities of the future. The tapestry of birthday celebrations woven with threads of history, culture, and human emotion continues to evolve, offering us valuable insights into the nature of our existence. Each birthday, whether marked by grand festivities or intimate gatherings, is an opportunity to celebrate life, reflect on our journeys, and connect with those we hold dear. In closing, let us carry forward the spirit of medieval birthday practices into our contemporary celebrations. May we continue to honor our individuality, nurture our relationships, and create joyful moments that resonate through time. As we celebrate the passage of another year, let us remember the lessons of history and the connections that bind us, embracing the beauty of life's milestones and the stories we share along the way.